Hi, everybody. I am here with Ken Ammi, and he has a Twitter feed called Atheism is Dead. And so you can get his general thesis there. But we're going to talk today about something different. We're going to talk about UFOs or UAPs or unidentified flying objects, space aliens, all that kind of good stuff. And he has written, I believe, around 8 books on aliens. And so he has a lot of perspectives on it. You can see a couple of the book covers on the thumbnail here. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ken.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure speaking to you again. It's been way too long.
Yeah, I agree. I've had you on my channel before, just as an individual. I had you on, then you came on and you debated Jeff Williams. And the debates are always interesting.
Oh, yes.
So okay, well, let's talk about these unidentified flying objects, because it seems like, here's what I'll say, the little I know. So since around the 1920s, 1930s, it seems the government and others have been making claims that there are UFO sightings, and they're going on all over the world. And there are some people like Stephen Greer and David Grush who have testified, or just at least gotten in front of the presidents or gotten in front of Congress to say that the government's involved in some way, but there are these UFOs and flying Tic Tacs and all this kind of stuff is going on. The craziest thing I heard was when David Grush said to Congress that they somehow had collected non-human biologics. That's what they called it. And so I thought, that's weird. But I didn't know the angle we're going to take today, because I don't know. I haven't had a chance to read your book. So I'm not sure what we're going to do. If we're going to talk about non-human biologics, or if we're going to propose that maybe there's some sort of demonic dimension going on here. So what do you think?
Well, you leave that up to me. So this is actually a good example of my MO when it comes to virtually anything I discuss. I like to define terms first so that we understand what we're actually talking about. And that's with everything, whether I'm talking about evolution or giants or what have you. What are we talking about? Let's not jump into the middle of it. So if you don't mind, I'm going to attempt to screen share a few slides to kind of wrap our heads around what even are we talking about when it comes to these plural phenomena. And I'm going to see if, there we go. This should allow me to show you. Okay, so if we start here, can you all see that?
Let me put it up on the thing. Okay, we can see it.
So this is basically me just saying, look, there's the quote unquote aliens phenomena, there's the quote unquote UFOs phenomena. And those are two main categories of phenomena that aren't necessarily related, because there's people who say that they interact with aliens, and there's people who say they see UFOs. But the ones that interact with aliens don't necessarily see UFOs, and the ones who see UFOs don't necessarily interact with aliens. And yet, there is that third subcategory where people say, well, I've had experience with both. So that's just to start categorizing this, right? So when we talk about aliens, when we talk about UFOs, those may be completely unrelated issues, right? Because you could see something in the sky and say, oh, what's that? Oh, I don't know. So just because of that, that doesn't mean you can just jump to the inclusion of, well, therefore it's aliens necessarily. I mean, I had a UFO sighting a few years ago, and it's literally just something. I have no idea what it was, but that's as far as I can go. It was just something, and I didn't know what it was. To insert aliens into it, then you're in another ballgame, another category, and you need for a certain amount of data to take that jump. And so there's those two main and then one subcategory, and that leads us to subcategories. So let's say under UFOs, well, there's people who claim that they are alien craft, and those can either be subcategory of a nuts and bolt vehicle or some sort of energy orbs or some kind of morphing, right? Like shape shifting thing, amorphous, right? Or UFO, again, literally meaning unidentified by definition, and flying, or mine was floating, as far as I can tell, objects. Could be some kind of atmospheric phenomena like clouds, ball lightning, that sort of thing. Could be just a good old fashioned aircraft that you don't recognize or birds, balloons, satellites. Could be some kind of hoax or some kind of secret government tech, and that would kind of loop us over to that aircraft. That's something of which we're not aware. Such as when people started reporting seeing black triangular UFOs, and then after a few years, we learned of the stealth fighter. And what does that look like? Well, it looked black and triangular. People were just completely unfamiliar with that being just a secret government experiment airplane. It was a UFO because they couldn't identify it by definition. Right? Then on the alien side, well, here they say that they either come from within our universe, another solar system, and then conveniently the farther reaches of space, because it's kind of well known that in the early contactee movement, um, people who were claiming to deliver messages from aliens said, well, the aliens say they're from our solar system, right? They're from Mars, they're from Venus, they're from whatever planets. But then the more we explored those planets and recognized that either there's no life on them or there couldn't be, as far as we know, then they started saying, well, we really come from further away, to where it's kind of the Pleiades and places like that. Well, then we started kind of examining those places, and they end up saying, well, we're really just from further away where humans haven't looked yet.
Wait, this is what the aliens are telling the humans?
Right.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that it's well known that they keep coming from farther and further away places the more we explore the universe and recognize that it can't be true. So then they jump to, well, the next subcategory, we actually come from an alternate realities, right? Another dimension, another universe, you name it. Because then it's inaccessible to humans. And so it's convenient to just kind of have them say that, nah, we don't really come from the solar system or even your entire universe. We come from somewhere wholly other, to where you humans don't have access. So, take our word for it. And along those lines, sometimes the claims are that these are biological organisms, sometimes that there's sort of spirit, or something we'll be discussing is whether they're angels or demons. Some are just government ops, right? Operations, secret government operations. And some, of course, are just good old-fashioned hoaxes. And so those are kind of the subcategories. So what I'm emphasizing is when somebody says alien, you got to try to figure out what they're talking about to begin with. In fact, I was in a comment section today with somebody saying that the Genesis 6 affair, as I call it, actually had to do with aliens. And I said, well, yeah, by definition, angels are aliens. They're extraterrestrial. They're not from the Earth. So, yeah, of course. But that just kind of gives you an example of how these word games are played. So he meant something very different by the word aliens, but I just contextualized it as, well, yeah, by definition, not from here. That's all it may mean. Then when we get into the issue of the human experience with these phenomena, again, plural phenomena, could be a dream, could be hallucination, some kind of hypnotic suggestion. Others claim they're actual close encounters. And then you have people who call themselves experiencers or abductees or contactees or channelers. And now channelers are my favorite because it's so convenient that you can tell us that you're relaying messages from aliens and you don't have to produce a craft, you don't have to produce an alien. You're just kind of getting it through some kind of psychic connection. And that's very convenient, isn't it? I mean, yeah, honestly. And now the thing to me is, how come people who claim to be channeling the spirits of dead humans have the same shtick as the people who claim to be channeling aliens from elsewhere, wherever they may come from? It's the same exact shtick. And that should tell us something right then and there, that it's either a complete fraud or there's that, certainly would consider inevitable correlation between occultism and these phenomena. And that's something that we want to talk about. So this to me is part of what I did when I sought to discover why it was that the so-called gray alien became the poster children of alien. I mean, people have claimed to have seen all kinds of aliens, but the gray alien is certainly the most recognizable. No question about that. And when I sought to understand how that came about, especially in terms of the interaction of pop culture and the real actual culture in which we live and the history of ideas and that type of thing, I found that once I looked back to H.G. Wells, who wrote an essay called The Man of the Year Million, I was essentially done at that moment. And I found that. Because what he was saying in 1893 is he was just writing an essay speculating about, well, what will humanity look like a million years from now, right? And these illustrations were made based on his description. And he's saying that humanity would become a lot more intellectual. So according to the evolution theories of his day, that would mean a bigger brain. And what you need to house a bigger brain? Well, you need a bigger skull. And then the bodies are very diminutive because our machinery, our high tech is doing the manual type of menial tasks for us. So humanity wouldn't need large bodies anymore. And in fact, what they're depicting there is that they're dipping themselves into a vat of nutrients. So they don't even need big mouths to eat or anything like that because they're just absorbing the nutrients. But I mean, once you look at that right there, you essentially have a gray alien already. Spindly little body, big head, and big eyes to go along with it as the skull expands. So there you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead if you want.
So is your position that, I mean, let's figure out what this position is. So your position is that when H.G. Wells developed this image, that other people have now, this image kind of pops into people's mind, and you even see it on Bugs Bunny with the Martian, and you see
Yes.
it all over the place with these, and it's just one guy comes up with an image, everybody else kind of copies it, and so now when people say they encounter aliens, they have that image, but either they don't really encounter aliens, or they encounter aliens and the aliens purposely get themselves into an image that looks like that. Is that possible?
Yes, it touches upon that sort of concept of, that's why I refer to the history of ideas. How do these things come about and how are they perpetuated? So watch, I think I might actually answer a lot of your question as I progress here, because as I traced this basic idea through especially golden era sci-fi and fantasy literature and comic books and all of that stuff, I found things like this from a text of the late 1800s called Etty Dor. It's really Aphrodite backwards. For whatever reason, the guy titled it that. He's talking about inner Earth dwellers. So again, just like in H.G. Wells, they weren't aliens, neither are these. They're just dwellers of the inner Earth, and they're described as less than 5 feet in height, skin the color lightly blue putty, forehead extends in an unbroken plane from the crown to cheekbone, and chubby tip of an abortive nose without nostrils formed. Short projection, there was no sense of eyes, or there were no sockets. So in this case, the description, maybe not the illustration, but the description in and of itself is very great alien-like, besides the eye issue. And then jumping to the issue I've already touched upon a couple times, this is infamous occultist Aleister Crowley's illustration of a being with whom he claims to have interacted in 1919 and thereabouts.
Now he's a famous atheist, right?
Well,
or an occultist?
Definitely occultist, and I mean that's another term that might need definition. But he's like the infamous occultist, right?
Mm.
And he called this character Lamb. And if you notice, what do you got? little body, big giant head. And the OTO, Order Templi Orientis, has a ritual whereby they stare at this thing meditatively, and they claim that right above what appear to be little tiny eyes, you can actually see in the illustration that there's the outline of much bigger, stereotypically almond-shaped eyes that I kind of shaded in over here.
Hmm.
So there you have that correlation between whatever this is supposed to be and the occult. This too, OTO, Typhonian OTO, occult organization, same thing. They're publishing this newsletter, and there's that same kind of physiognomy, right? That same kind of look.
Wait, so who's publishing that newsletter? What is that?
The OTO. So Aleister Crowley was a member of the OTO, Order Templi Orientis.
Oh, okay, okay.
And this is the Typhonian branch of the OTO. The same thing, correlation to occultism. So now we jump back to, and this is going chronological, by the way. That's why it's kind of like jumping categories. But like if you look at this, little body, big head, and what is it? 1927, the machine man, right? So another concept of this is actually a human being. It's just that through high tech and evolution and all that stuff, it ends up looking like this. This is not an alien; it's a man, right?
So they
Same
think,
here.
so these all people posit that we're going to look pretty disproportional in the
Yes.
future, a million years out.
And this tells it to you right here, 1931, the man who evolved. And what does the man who evolved look like? Spindly little body and big giant head. I mean, it's H.G. Wells all over again, and perpetuated time and again, basically. And even here, you have this this character saying, "One more jolt of my evolution ray, Captain Comet, and you'll be a giant bodiless brain, just like me." So again, you have this human being who is artificially evolved to the point that he's got a little tiny body and a giant head, and the ultimate, the more evolved being flying around in some kind of flying saucer is just nothing but a brain at this point, right?
You know what's the funny part? I'm thinking about this, the evolution. Now, if you think about how a baby grows up, when babies are born, they have little tiny bodies compared to their head. It's like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's like we're evolving back to be proportionally babies.
yeah. It's like ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny style of thing there. Um, then another publication, and look at the title: "If Tomorrow Comes." There with the world, right? So again, forward looking into the future, and what would humanity look like? Big giant head, big eyes. And then of course, probably the most well known alien face was commissioned by Whitley Strieber to be put on the cover of his book Communion. Now, I actually asked Strieber why it is that he refers to those beings as visitors and specifically grays. But I said, well, why do you call them grays? Why this one isn't gray? And all he said is, I don't know. That's just what I saw. So it's
Oh,
kind
so
of like,
he's saying he actually saw one of these things?
oh yeah, he's
And they look like that. Now let's look at this image here. Now, you notice whenever, if you've ever listened to exorcists, when they talk about these exorcisms, a lot of times people's eyeballs, the pupils turn completely black. So it's kind
yes,
of interesting that the demon there has those black eyeballs.
yes, and there is a medical phenomena where the pupil expands until it covers the entire white of the eye. So that kind of could show you that something is definitely going on internally within that person or that being to result in that. So then again here, Atlas, all thinking. So this being, this person who has given themselves over to just nothing but thought, is being depicted as having a big brain and need a big skull to go along with it.
Hmm.
Even the Wizard of Oz got into the act.
Oh yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, that's just bizarre, that kind of a depiction, right? So a more advanced and powerful being depicting himself as that.
Hmm.
And then again, Tales of Wonder, publication, World of Tomorrow. And what it does the guy from Tomorrow look like? Big head. I mean, it's over and over again. And here, even Superman, when his pal Jimmy Olsen gets these superpowers, right? He becomes big-headed. It's just
The
super
coincidence
intelligent
is
as Brian, as Superman.
when people say you have a big head, a lot of times it's referring to a big ego. And so kind of the
Oh,
pride,
that's good.
ego kind of all goes
Yeah.
together.
That's good. And then even Superman himself ended up there as he's in this tubule thing. Superman
Hey,
of when? The
look at
future.
this. Captive Desk. I just noticed his little icon or whatever you call it. His little avatar is looks like kind of an alien.
Oh,
Captive
that's-
Desk in the chat.
So again, look at the Superman of the future. And how is he depicted? His head grew. Right? And even the Flash, swell-headed physically and mentally.
So all through, we can show that all through our culture in recent years, relatively recent years, there have been numerous depictions of these things, and they all kind of follow each other in a way.
Right. And the concept is, so what I found ironically in transhumanism and in the alien phenomena is the unholy trinity, and three elements of which are essentially always bound together, and that's evolution, high tech, and occultism. They go hand in hand. Don't ask me why, but I've noticed that pattern time and time and time and time again in transhumanism and the alien phenomena.
And notice it's always a corruption of exactly what Christ does. Like they have Christ on the cross between, I think Hugh Ross pointed this out. Christ was on the cross between 12 and 3 in the afternoon. So a lot of times some of these supposed alien abductions just happen to occur between midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, the demon hours. And so Christ appeared on a cross that was kind of like this, and then the demons invert the cross. And so not demons. Yeah, I guess demons. Demons are satanic people, satanic cults, the occults, all that. And notice with the occults too, the only one they ever go after is Jesus. They don't go after Buddha or Hindus or anything like that. They like to discount Jesus.
Absolutely. It is 99% anti-Bible, anti-Christian, anti-Jesus message that they give to us. And, 1% anti-miscellaneous, I guess. But that right there speaks volumes to us.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have this, and again, another example. Visit from when? The future. And then even
let me tell you something. One of my students is working at NASA, and she said that they're pouring in a bunch of investment to get us to Mars. Like that's what she said. Like the government,
right?
NASA. Which Hugh Ross said would cost well into the trillions, like way too unaffordable for us to build something that a human could survive on.
Yeah, I remember him talking about that on your show and referring to that the spacecraft would have to be like 10 miles long or something.
Yeah. Oh, you saw that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This one's from the movie AI. And I found it interesting because when I first saw the movie, I thought, oh, okay, what happens is that this android ends up thousands of years into the future, and it interacts with these beings whom I thought were aliens just by the way they look. But Steven Spielberg ended up saying that, well, no, they're not aliens. They're just silicon-based high tech. They're basically androids of the future. And what do they look like? Look, we've been tracing.
Yeah.
So now what ends up happening?
Always bald. The aliens are always bald. Where'd their hair go? That's the thing. It's like it's a corruption on made in the image of God. Not to say that bald men can't, but they're bald. You never see any with any hair.
Well, hey, maybe we could start a franchise. Toupees for aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I agree with you there. When it comes to all of this stuff, and when it comes to occultism and transhumanism, and really any philosophy that is unbiblical, ungodly, unchristian, it is inevitably a corruption of God's created order.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on in our culture today as well. That's all it is. It all
Yeah.
comes down to corruption of God's created order. So now, I chose the examples of what that are blunt about evolution in the future. But in between all of these, what happens is, I guess it's a concept of how many times can you tell the same story. So what happened in the fantasy literature and sci-fi literature is eventually, it seems to me as the observer, as a researcher, that they got tired of telling the same story over and over and over again, that, well, this is a person from the future and they evolved, so now they have a little body and a big head. And all of a sudden, they started telling stories about how, no, these are actually aliens from other planets or the vast distances of the universe or other universes. See, they kind of found a new little spin to put on it. And to me, that's how we ended up with this figure of the gray alien. Okay, and now there's just a few more slides I wanted to show. For example, the one on the left is an illustration of an alien that a person claims to have actually seen, but the middle and the right are just from an old-fashioned TV show, a sci-fi TV show. And obviously this person, either consciously or not, picked up on that depiction of aliens and then ended up claiming that they saw one. Really, I mean, aliens look like, I don't know, some kind of makeshift, cheesy human uniform with a strap across, left to right. Same exact
Oh,
look.
I think he's frozen. He froze a little bit.
No.
Oh, there you are. You're back. You just froze just a little bit.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I definitely think makeshift and cheesy is right. That's the last thing I heard from you.
well, see, the point was that the illustration on the left is somebody who claimed to actually have seen an alien. But if you look at the sci-fi of the time, they were depicting aliens on a certain TV show as looking just like that. So obviously, this person, consciously or not, picked up on that look and claimed, "Oh, I actually saw that alien."
So there's a few options here. So one option is they didn't really see the alien, they made it up in their mind. Option B is they saw the alien and it's really a demon who disguised himself as an alien. And then option C is that they saw nothing and they're just bluffing and making stuff up trying to get attention.
Or just watching sci-fi movies and TV shows, and either consciously or not talking themselves into, well, consciously would be they're talking themselves into believing that this is real, or they're just have some mental instability, and then they hallucinate. Who knows? There's a lot of phenomena that could cover that. But if you look at the picture on the middle and right, again, just look at the basic sash across the body and the uniform, and the one on the left being a supposed witnessed alien, along with these, the Barney and Betty Hill case, Patty Price case, Mario Restier case. They all have that same basic uniform on. Where no one's going to depict aliens looking like that anymore, because it's just not fashionable in sci-fi anymore, right? But
yeah,
same here. I mean, why do all of these supposed real eyewitness accounts, they're all dressed the same? I mean,
now what about the claim from David Grush that these non-human biologics were piloting these Tic Tacs? Now, Hugh Ross has said this is he didn't name exactly what particular parts of the bodies they have retained, but I'm wondering what you think about that.
So, I mean, the claim is, hey, look at that. It's flying in an unusual manner that we're not used to seeing, ergo aliens. And I'm just not really sure. Besides the fact that those guys are making a living off of selling alien tales, I'm not sure why you would make that jump. For instance, I'm sure it looked really impressive when we all first saw the video, but by now the trigonometry's been done on the Tic Tac. We now know mathematically that it was going like 40 miles an hour. I mean, it's not tragically impressive. I can get in my car and drive much faster than that. So it's been done. The trigonometry.
Was it really only good? Okay, so they've
Yeah.
done, because I
Oh, yeah.
thought they thought it was going more like 15,000 miles an
Yes.
hour.
And yes, initially, and also by those who keep perpetuating it so they have a story to tell. But
Mm,
the math has been done. I mean, it's on paper and anybody could double check it. It's a done deal.
interesting. I'll have to go
It's a,
find that.
yeah. I can't remember the gentleman's name who did the mathematics, and then NASA double checked him and they put out some kind of report about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Now,
okay.
Jedediah says, I just want to comment. Here in India, it's very common to see demons literally manifest. They look physical, but they are interdimensional beings. At the blood and name of Jesus Christ, they disappear. It's good.
Yes.
I believe that because I've had my own experience. When I say the Our Father and the Hail Mary, boom,
Yeah,
gone.
I remember you talking about that. And again, why would there be that one name that aliens fear? Right? If they're
Hmm.
just traveling from another part of the universe. What do they care?
Exactly. So that's the thing. I mean, if you listen to people who've exorcists talk about this kind of stuff too, the manifestations and that kind of thing. And so I think these beings are. Oh no, I lost. I'll be back. You might have hit the wrong button. I think that these beings are alien. I mean, I believe that we are in a spiritual battle. This is spiritual warfare here in this world, and so I think that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, it says Susan says she hears Dr. Michael Brown talk about the spiritual battles that go on in India. Captive Death says Hugh says they're invisible aliens and debris. Oh, Ken's back. Okay, good. Here we go.
I got
You're back.
abducted.
You got abducted. Yeah,
Well,
that's. I just wanted to say he was talking about spiritual battles in India. I just want to add one little thing on that. The interesting thing about India is with its Hindu religion and thousands of gods is I've talked to people like Rob Rowe. He's got that Sentinel Apologetics, and he's
yes.
from India, and he was talking about just some of the activity that goes on there with the demonic spirits and how crazy it is. Here's Dr. Ross says 1 to 10% of residual alien activity is due to demon behavior. So he studied that. So that's.
So, in my book, we didn't mention, I guess my main book on this issue is 50 Shades of Grey Aliens. And I do have, first of all, I have like 50 pages worth of the kind of slideshow I was showing you. That's in there. And it
Mm-hmm.
makes it very obvious where this concept came from. But also a lot of examples of occultism. I mean, off the top of my head, I can recall Whitley Strieber, who claims to have first had these experiences in his meditation room. And of course, subsequently, he claims, oh, now I remember it goes way back to childhood. It seems to me whenever he's falling out of fashion, Whitley Strieber has convenient memories that kind of put him back in the spotlight. But hey, that's probably another issue. Or
I don't know him, actually. It's great. Well, I mean, have you noticed in our culture that occultism, let's go back to that. Burning Man. Have you heard about what happened at Burning Man with that flash flood? Thank you, God.
No.
So Burning Man it's like a huge pagan occultish festival, and it goes on in, I believe, northern Nevada in some desert area. And so they were all there within the last couple of weeks. All of these people, thousands of people, go out there, and the idea is everyone's supposed to bring a gift, and that's how they barter there. That's how they bring money there. They won't buy or sell, but they barter gifts. Like you bring a big basket full of bananas and you trade that for something else. Well, they had porta potties and they had all this stuff set up. They had a place where they were doing orgies and all kinds of stuff, all spiritism and occultish stuff. And suddenly this rain just comes flying down into the desert and completely rains them all out. And then you could see images of the porta potties all filled up to the limits and all kinds of gross stuff. And they couldn't get out of there because their tires were stuck in the ground. It was like the craziest thing. And it's like, I mean, if you could not believe in God, but these are some pretty interesting coincidences.
Well, now speaking of, I've found that if we think about if we break down what aliens are telling us, and for some reason they like to speak in cheesy British accents, like a James Bond villain when they're channeled. And also they like to use New Age terms. So let's say you boil down what we've been told that aliens are telling us throughout the many decades now. It's a perfect form of misinformation in my mind, because their points are good, but their solutions are bad. So they'll say like, well, you humans are polluting the planet. You're destroying your planet. Yeah, okay, absolutely. That's accurate. And you humans, you're always battling each other over politics, right? Territory. Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing that all along. And you humans are fighting over religion and theology and everything like that. Yeah, we've also been doing that for millennia. So, I agree down the line, but their solution is, therefore, you should form a one world government and a one world religion, and you should worship the earth. It's like, well, why is it that if I read, say, the book of Romans chapter 1 and then the book of Revelation, how come those are the things we're warned against?
Yeah.
Is that a coinky dink? I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, especially, I mean, that's the whole thing, like with the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and his whole transhumanist idea, and they're going to implant these things into your minds, and so they can read your minds, and they're going to do, they've got all these plans that they're trying to work on that go towards a one world government. They wanted to seize on COVID because they thought it was an opportunity to have some sort of an incident that could unite everybody and shut us all down.
And recall that I mentioned that I'm noticing the same patterns, whether I'm looking at transhumanism or this alien phenomena. It's the same exact pattern. It's all the same. It's just in a different guise, right? I mean, because if you think about how is it that it's explained to us that these aliens became super high tech and look the way they do? Well, because they evolved for millions of years beyond what humans have reached yet, and therefore they developed these high-tech means of travel. And it's the same exact thing that we just saw going all the way back to H.G. Wells over a century and a half ago. And so what's interesting is that there are quite a few people nowadays saying, you know what, all this stuff isn't about aliens from other planets. They are starting to say more and more, these are actually humans from the future that are coming back to visit us. So, I mean, that same basic seed that H.G. Wells planted way back then is taking fruition. And that's why, they're really trying to warn us about the earth and all that stuff, because in the future, it's so messed up that they're trying to come back and prevent that from happening. I mean, we've seen this stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think the idea that people don't realize is when you do practice in the occult and you do actively try to channel demons, they think they're channeling their dead grandmother or something like that, and rather who's coming isn't your dead grandmother, even if the demon has manifested as if it looks like your dead grandmother. It's a demon. That's who you've channeled. You've just brought attention to yourself, and now you got to break those chains or you're going to be oppressed or somehow victimized.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple more examples. The Billy Meyer case. He claims he had those experiences in an ashram while he was living in India. And Jason Horsley, an acquaintance of mine, had this sort of phenomena of experience while he was in a Buddhist retreat. And a good friend of mine also had some sort of UFO encounter when he was really mixed up in an abusive occult situation. I mean, it's like you cannot get away from it. Or one telling example is Sean Stone, when he was doing the Jesse Ventura show, Conspiracy Theory. They went to investigate Skinwalker Ranch, and at night they're out there, and Sean Stone's kind of just looking down and grabbing his forehead, and someone asks him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm summoning the spirits." It's like, well, wait a minute. You're supposed to be out there investigating aliens and UFOs, and what you claim you're out there doing is that you're summoning spirits? I mean, what kind of context is that to jump from the one to the other? And I think that you'll recall that I pointed out that in the case of Dr. Stephen Greer, he makes a lot of good points, just like the aliens make a lot of good points. And then in the end, you popped in and out, but I could see that I was still live, so I took over your show.
Good. No, I know. I looked and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, internet went out. Yeah. So what do you
So
think
no, I
about
was
Dr.
just,
Stephen Greer? What do you think about
you
his?
saw that comment I posted on one of your videos, so I was just repeating it, which is Greer makes a lot of really good points, just like the aliens do. But in the end, he's like, hey, let's get together in the middle of the woods and engage in occult rituals to summon aliens. It's like,
That's the
wait a minute,
concern.
what just happened here?
Yeah, he thinks the thing is Greer thinks these are friendly creatures. And he wants to communicate with them. And so he's engaging in the occult. That's what scares
Right,
me about
right.
him.
And incidentally, Whitley Strieber, and he's been kind of the poster child for this kind of phenomena for many, many decades. Partly because he was an author and also known from some movies that were made from his books, so he had like this extra popularity. But nowadays, well, let me back up. He began by stating that the experiences he had with these visitors, these grays, were so horrific and traumatic that he said they had to be demons. They had to. There's just no other way to look at it.
Hmm.
But through the decades, he's taken on different views. Part of me thinks that it's kind of a case of Stockholm syndrome. And his latest kick is, for instance, when his wife passed away, subsequent to that, he claims that he co wrote a book with her, okay, posthumously. And so now he's saying that he thinks this whole phenomena of the grays is really about interacting with the dead. Okay, so in his mind, the way I would put it, it's basically necromancy, and he's just coming out and saying it outright.
Wow. Yeah, dangerous.
Now,
Danger. I want to clarify something in the audience. I got Diagoras in there, and he keeps saying stuff about the rain. I kind of said that as a joke. You know, it's funny. Oh, isn't it coincidence that it pours in where Burning Man was? And I didn't mean to say that that's definitely the scourge from God. That was just sort of saying it, just joking around. And so everyone, sometimes people take people so seriously. They think that every statement you say is you're saying, God, this is what God did. He decided he was going to put the rain. Like, I can't say that that's what God did. I can say it's a funny coincidence that happened to happen. But am I saying that rain in the desert is unusual? Yes. Am I saying, well, what about hurricanes in Florida? Well, those aren't terribly unusual. Those are usual. We've been getting hurricanes in Florida for centuries. And so that's just how it is. We get them all the time.
and another statement I noticed is a question here that goes, engaging with a friendly alien would be occult. Well, again, I have absolutely no idea what you mean by alien, but that would kind of be like, how do you define friendly? Is a friendly alien the kind that comes to you and tells you they're from another dimension and then tells you to not believe in Jesus or the Bible? Is that a friendly alien? How do you determine that? And would it be occult? Again, it depends on what alien is, because if okay, let me take a step back. I'm not claiming all alien and UFO phenomena are occult. Obviously not, because if you watch this from the beginning, I gave you categories and subcategories that have absolutely nothing to do with the occult, such as black government ops and hallucinations. I mean, that right there. But is there an aspect of these phenomena that are occultic? Well, I don't have to tell you about it. Just listen to the people talking about it. The ones that are
Yeah.
talking about their own supposed experiences. They are the ones who are telling us this stuff. And my book is filled with examples. I mean, they're the ones
Mhm.
doing it. I'm just pointing them out. Now, if you want to talk demonism for a minute, I do think demons are the occult theory of everything. And it's not just because I can be like the church lady on Saturday Night Live and just slap the term demon on any given phenomena. It's not because of that. It's because of what is told to us about their characteristics and their behavior, and how, in the cases of the things that we're talking about, of course, they would want to claim to be advanced, and therefore we should listen to them and start telling us to not believe in Jesus or the Bible and to not be Christians. I mean,
Yeah. And that's what a lot of them are doing. That's what people say. Oh
exactly.
yeah, I had this message from this spirit from the other side and says I shouldn't believe in Jesus. I mean, clearly, why do they always? It's always Jesus.
It is. And so again, the example of the channelers, alien channelers and channelers of the dead. How come they're doing the same shtick and they're telling us the same basic things? I mean, there's a certain point where if you listen enough to the people who are claiming this stuff about themselves and their experiences, you have to conclude, well, there's a pattern there. At least me as a researcher, I notice patterns. And it's like, this is inevitable. That's why I'm saying there's an unholy trinity of evolution, high tech, and occultism. I don't know why it's there. I'm just telling you that's the pattern. So, for instance, this is a non sequitur. Hey, aliens have high tech, ergo, they have high spirituality. Well, what happened there? That's a jump. I mean, that would be like if one of our astronauts lands on a planet where there's aliens, to us, aliens, right? There would be native there. And therefore, because our astronauts are good engineers or pilots, therefore they're qualified to speak to that alien race about spirituality. No, not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, that's the thing. Now I have listened, I'll just say kind of piggybacking on some of these ideas that we've talked about tonight. I've listened to a number of different exorcists. I just love listening to exorcists because I find their stories are fascinating. And I watched that movie Nefarious. And so through these listenings, Carlos Martins, Dan Rehill, a whole bunch of other ones, Father Ripperger, what's some other names? Anyway, there was just a bunch of them. A lot of them have some common things. They say demons are very legalistic, like extremely legalistic and extremely consistent. And so you can figure out what the demons are going to do that way. But the other thing is when they're given legal rights to either possess somebody or to bug somebody, to appear around somebody, one of the things they do is they try as hard as they can to get the person to commit suicide, because then they have the rights to them in the afterlife. And so that's why, and they can get in through little portals like Ouija boards and all tarot cards and all that kind of stuff. And so, or they could get in through Hawaiian lava that Pele is supposedly taken a look at and cursed. And so there's all these ways that they can get into your house, get into your shelter, and it's kind of scary.
Or through looking to aliens as your saviors. They're going to come and they're going to fix us. They're going to set us straight. They're going to fix our planet. They're going to tell us true spirituality.
They're going to give you special powers.
Same thing.
Yeah, Hugh Ross points this out too, but this idea of power seeking, like you're getting some special power, you're able to maybe read people's minds, or you're able to do teleport. People have made claims that they can actually teleport in some way. So there's all this kind of strange stuff going on that they're given powers to curse people if they want. And so,
right. So my other 7 or so books on the alien and UFO phenomena are actually movie review books, because I started reviewing movies with alien and UFO themes. But I mean, my style of movie reviews isn't about the cinematography or the acting and all that stuff. I don't care about. It's what's the message behind it? What's the worldview philosophy? What are they trying to tell us? And so, for instance, if you think about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you might think, well, there's no real occultism in that story. But there is, because you have poltergeist-like phenomena, right? Just like you were saying right now about how is it that interacting with aliens suddenly gives you superpowers, and it's that kind of concept of how come what we're told by people who claim to have experiences with aliens and what we're told by people who claim to have experiences with poltergeists, again, occultism, how come they're saying the same sort of things? I mean, that's kind of been well known for quite a few decades now, if not over half a century. At least in academia, I'm not just talking about people making claims, but the people who actually research this stuff at an academic level. They noticed that almost straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot in common, and it's very risky for people. But the interesting thing is, I mean, just like I listened to this guy Howard Storm, and he was an atheist who had a near-death experience, and he went into hell, and he was being attacked by these people who were just really angry, and they were tearing at him and doing all kinds of horrible things. And he said that all of a sudden he gets this strange idea in his mind that told him audibly, he could hear his own voice say, "Pray, you need to pray," and he just all of a sudden he said something about praying, and the demons or the people just started avoiding him. They couldn't stand this idea of praying. And then he said, "Jesus Christ, save me," or something like that, or "Please save me." And then it all ended. He saw the light and he went into heaven, or he went towards heaven. So it was kind of a cool story.
Yeah, I have not heard you mention him before. I might have to look into that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you didn't say Howard Stern.
Yes. Yeah. Today's 9/11, speaking of Howard Stern, and it was so fun. And I'm saying that because on 9/11, I was listening to Howard Stern on my way to work when the towers were hit, and Howard Stern's commentary on it. That's probably one of the last times I listened to Howard Stern.
Wow.
It's crazy. So yeah, many years ago today, this horrific thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
So Ken, is there anything else that we should chat about? Anything we've missed today as we kind of get near the end of an hour or so?
Well, just my main thing would be that with which I started, which is define your terminology, understand what category of phenomena you're talking about before jumping off into talking about it. And then also, because in the comments section, they're talking about the movies and comic books I noted. And that's, again, as I repeated a few times, it has to do with the history of ideas. So you can't just really say, well, it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, therefore it's meaningless. Well, no, because the human being actually wrote that, and they wrote it for a reason, and they wrote it based on this history of ideas that they have and the culture has had that leads to them wanting to express something in terms of what they'll call science fiction. And these are the kind of concepts. So it begins with evolution and high tech, and then it changes into, hey, these aren't actually evolved humans. They're actually aliens from another planet, universe. And then it's kind of coming back around to no, these are future humans visiting us. And then the inevitable correlation, I mean, again, you'll find this from their own mouths between occultism and these phenomena. So in terms of, I know that you titled this, "Do Space Aliens Exist?" And sorry, folks, I'm not here to, to give you the answer. But what I would say is whether actual biological or somewhat ethereal intelligent beings exist in the far reaches of the universe or another universe or another part of the multiverse, to me, that's a question that's so way down the line. It should be the last thing we ever consider, because there's a lot of stuff ahead of it that we do know about already and that we can make correlations to already. Like we know about secret government ops. We know about mental disorders where people claim that they're experiencing things they really aren't. We know about the correlation to occultism. I mean, we know so much already that we really need to put ahead of speculating about, well, there must be aliens, because if you deny it, then you're going against the statistics and you're arrogant, which is pretty much all you'll ever hear. It's statistics and then you're just arrogant. There has to be life elsewhere. Well, okay, maybe we'll find out one of these days, but that's way, 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 way down the line. Way down there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. So let's concentrate on what we do know and what people have experienced, and note the correlations between the occult activities. Like you, Ross, has pointed out, it just so happens that the alien claims of abductions and things like that, where actually people have had these things where they're abducted and they won't remember anything that for like a day or two possibly, and then suddenly they come to. Now, there's a guy, I won't name him, but he's an atheist, and he's over in the Netherlands, and he said he was abducted by aliens a number of years ago, and he lost memory of like 2 days or something like that, and he came to later on. Now, to me, I mean, it could be, I've heard the same thing from exorcists. They talk about demon possessions where people will lose memory of a couple of days, and all of a sudden they'll come to and they'll find themselves sitting somewhere eating excrement. And so yeah.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. So first, I would say to you and anyone else listening, do you have any memory of being abducted by aliens? And if you say no, I'll say, well, then it actually happened. They just erased your memory. You really want to get at a paranoid person, go through that. But no, If you think about the MK slew of experiments done by the CIA and their ilk, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, it's out in the open. They were MK Ultra, MK Naomi, MK all this and that the CIA did back a few decades ago. Part of the point of that was how to cause amnesia, and it was done particularly through traumatic events because we have this built-in way of continuing to live our lives after a traumatic event by either complete or partial amnesia. That's why, just as a mundane example, you'll hear quite often about women who give birth and then they say, I'm never doing that again. But sure enough, after a few months, they say, I want another baby because the trauma is behind them now. And all they have left is just a pleasant memory. And here I have a baby. That's just part of how we're built. So, again, how is it that these aliens are doing to us the same thing that secret government ops were doing to us? Same shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of crazy. I mean, it's crazy. And I would love to know more on the government, but I entertained the idea of Stephen Greer, what he was saying, and I find it interesting, but because there's no way for us to verify that, or no way for me to verify any of that. And it's almost a little depressing. I decided not to listen to any more of those videos because I stopped. I thought, if that actually is true, holy cow, I'm scared. So I see Bread of Life, Captive Desk, Susan, and we have Diagoras, and who else is in here? Captive Desk. Yep, we've got a little crew of people. So I want to say hi to everybody who's in here. So I haven't seen Bread of Life for a while. And so we have to we'd like to get a lot of you on my channel. So feel free to come in here sometime. So what are you working on now, Ken?
Well, I'm thankful that they would join us on an early evening on a Monday. That's really, really nice of you to stop by. I know it was kind of hard for me because I had to rush home from work and then start this. So I do thank you for being out there. And I don't know what I'm working on. My schedule nowadays is insane and unpredictable. So I don't even know what I'm working on. I mean, I have maybe 4 book projects that I should be working on that I sort of am not.
Yeah, I've got books hanging in the back of my. I haven't. It's terrible because I started a book on Catholicism and I started a book on Isaiah, and I haven't even looked at them in so long. It's just like I forgot. I wrote actually quite a bit on both of them, but they're both sitting there.
Now, I do love interacting with people, so if I find myself with some free time, I'll tend to get myself into the comment section of wherever it might be and then start up a ruckus in a nice way and just have discussions with people. That I really enjoy. But as far as big projects, yeah, I should be working on another alien UFO movie review book, and I should be working on a few others like part 2 of reviewing the series Raised by Wolves, which is a interesting sci-fi show. And I should be, and I'm sure I'll get around to everything eventually, right?
Any debates coming up?
Nothing like that, not that I know of.
Good. Yeah. So you're if you want to find Ken on Twitter, it's atheism_is_dead. So is atheism dead, or or is it alive?
Well, now, do you remember the debate I had with
Jeff? Yeah.
Yeah. So what I found hilarious is the question was whether atheism is dead. And he did this whole big presentation with graphs and charts about how there's more atheists around nowadays and religions going away. And when he was done with that, I just said, hey, that's all irrelevant because we're not talking about whether atheists exist. We're talking about whether atheism is dead as a concept, as a philosophy. So to me, that was hilarious that his whole opening statement was just really a category error. That's all it came down to. So I just said, that's a basic level error.
I think I always want to know with the atheists if they can make an argument that God does not exist. Craig Reed made a video about this and talked about the ontological question: does God exist? Because I haven't seen strong evidence from them that indicates God doesn't exist. Some might say they haven't had experiences with God's divine hiddenness, or they might say that they've seen some evil things on the planet, but that's just saying that We've seen evil things on the planet. People can be evil.
There's a whole issue with atheism, which is that, for instance, the very concept of that, they'll say you can't prove a negative, but I mean, even the statement you can't prove a negative claims to prove the negative, namely that you can't prove a negative. And of course, we can prove negatives, like I don't have a foot at the end of my arm. Look, there it is. It's a hand. I mean, so that's silly stuff. But when it comes down to it, I remember now, you saw a tweet I put out just a few days ago about how we could break this down and blame God for everything, and it wouldn't matter because atheism has no premise upon which to condemn anything anyway. So the atheists discredit themselves instantly.
I think that's why some use the lack of belief, because then they want to shift the burden of proof into the theist lap.
Yeah, they definitely, that's one of the denominations of atheism, and they definitely watered things down because when the original, modern era atheists came out and kept claiming to know that God doesn't exist as a positive affirmation, they kept being asked for proof, and they realized they didn't have any, so they just watered things down and took a fallback.
Mm-hmm. Or they slid into new subjects. They said, "Well, there's 40,000 different denominations of Christianity, so or whatever." It's like, so what? That doesn't address the question of does God exist if there's 40,000 different denominations.
It not only doesn't address it, it neglects the fact that in the Bible we're told there must be divisions among you, because that's how you can tell the genuine article.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, if you want to talk about what the genuine article is, that's a whole other issue than the fact that we were told to expect these things, just like we were told that there'll be great falling away. So if you try to impress me with statistics about how there's less and less Christians, I'll tell you exactly what I said during that debate. Thank you for providing even more evidence that the Bible's prophetically accurate. Appreciate that.
Yeah, the remnant. We're left to a remnant. So that's the way, the cleaning out of the church. You get the very strong Christians who are going to remain. God spits out the lukewarm, according to Revelation. So
Who would have thought we'd go from aliens and UFOs to demonology and now atheism, all in one show?
Only on one show. Yeah, it's good stuff. So listen, I guess I'll close out the chat so I can let you get back to your family and enjoy yourself tonight and all that kind of good stuff. But anything else you want to share before we go?
No, I would like to make a statement to you when we're done live streaming.
Okay.
I got a guest that you might be interested in on this topic.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Excellent.
But no, again, thank you, audience. Thank you, SJ. It's always lovely speaking with you, especially in person.
Yeah, likewise.
As much a person as it is being in cyber world.
Yes, cyber person. So good. So just remember, everybody, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do, do it all for God's glory. Thank you.